Bitcoin's comparison to other current cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin versus Ethereum, for example, why is it possible that Ethereum overtakes Bitcoin?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. Ethereum leadership is sort of wise enough to understand that they shouldn't compete with Bitcoin on those most profound qualities. Ethereum takes that completely different tack. Of course, I'm not ruling out that it could take over Bitcoin.
What's up, crypto empire builders? Okay, so today we got big news on Ethereum, but first, what a great time to be in crypto. Congratulations to everybody who made gains in these past couple of days in crypto. And now we have Paul. He'll talk about his price prediction at Ethereum. Make sure you guys subscribe for good content like this. And let's check out what he's saying.
There's a hunch that I have, and it's only a hunch, hence why it's a much smaller position. There's a hunch that from all of my conversations around this whole space, that there is a massive amount of human intellectual capital working in that particular space. But I see the amount of intellectual capital that's going into the Ethereum space, and I'm thinking, there's a chance that something really, really big comes out of this.
But I don't believe that it's all going to end up on the Bitcoin blockchain, and it doesn't necessarily have to, even if it's suboptimal. I think it's a much larger space, and there will be a interoperability amongst protocols to create this digital renaissance age. And within that, Ethereum probably plays a large role.
About Bitcoin's comparison to other current cryptocurrencies, so Bitcoin versus Ethereum, for example, why is it possible that Ethereum overtakes Bitcoin?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, I'm not ruling it out. Ethereum leadership is sort of wise enough to understand that they shouldn't compete with Bitcoin on those most profound qualities. Like, Ethereum doesn't really aspire to be more sound from a monetary perspective than Bitcoin, right? In fact, the Ethereum leadership are sort of constantly tweaking the monetary policy. So they went for a completely different trade-off, right? They also don't compete to be as decentralized from a governance perspective, right? Because there's leadership. There's an ETH Foundation. There's a charismatic leader, Vitalik. And Ethereum has this policy of hard forks. So in Bitcoin, hard forks are extremely rare. In Ethereum, it's the default way to change things. So it's a much more adaptive system, and it changes more frequently. But that also means that it's sort of they're incurring more risk when they introduce those changes. There's much more complexity. So Ethereum is smart because they sort of understood Bitcoin as the top dog when it comes to a sound money, a digital gold type thing. And they went for all of the different trade-offs. They wanted to be more of a platform. They wanted to have more complexity at the transactional layer. They wanted to take on more risk in terms of changing the protocol. They wanted to change more quickly. They wanted to make the monetary policy more mutable. So Ethereum takes that completely different tack. Of course, I'm not ruling out that it could take over Bitcoin from a market cap perspective. It's just a very different system. And I tend to think that Bitcoin is the most disruptive one because it's the most equipped to challenge sovereign currencies in the grand scheme.
Do you think they can coexist? So like in the future, do you see a world where, Ethereum captures some large percent of the market but nevertheless the minority?
100%. Bitcoin has already been tokenized and put onto Ethereum. Many units of Bitcoin, I think over $1 billion worth. So not only do they coexist, they are actually mutualistic. So they're like two creatures that have this, it's like the rhino and like the bird that pecks the parasites off the rhino's back or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know which is which in the analogy, but
yeah, I don't know who the parasites are. But
yeah. So, or, the alligator and the teeth cleaning fish or whatever. Right. So, I always wonder why the alligator doesn't just eat the fish, but I guess they're brushing its teeth basically. So, Ethereum it gives you more transactional flexibility. There's much more experimentation happening there. It has this whole decentralized finance element. There's a huge number of Bitcoins that circulate on the Ethereum protocol, right? Because Ethereum is open to other asset types, basically. So I think that's actually accretive to both systems, because Ethereum gets to have this good form of collateral, Bitcoin, on the system, which has good volatility characteristics. And then it's a supply sink for Bitcoins, which are sort of, now they're injected into this third-party protocol. And that, I think, reduces the velocity of Bitcoin overall, and it's probably good for the valuation.
So you see, it quite possibly could be a symbiotic relationship. That's really interesting.
I think so.
20% into Ether or Ethereum. Explain kind of what the thesis there is. Is it a market structure thing? It's a smaller market cap, and therefore if everything goes up, it should go up more? Is it something around kind of the value and the technology? What's driving the interest?
There's a hunch that I have, and it's only a hunch, hence why it's a much smaller position. There's a hunch that from all of my conversations around this whole space, that there is a massive amount of human intellectual capital working in that particular space, because there's the flexibility of how Ethereum is based. And there's a load of flaws, like there's flaws about everything. So, I'm not saying it's a perfect world. I also don't think of Bitcoin and Ethereum as the same thing. Bitcoin to me is this pristine collateral. It's perfect. I don't need, now whether everybody builds the Lightning layer and all the other stuff on top, great. I own tons of Bitcoin, but I see the amount of intellectual capital that's going into the Ethereum space, and I'm thinking there's a chance that something really, really big comes out of this. And so I think of it as a platform. And it's a very crude way of looking at it. But if I see a lot of people all building on one platform, then the probability, as a VC, the probability of one of those bets paying off huge, let's say DeFi ends up being on there and it becomes a real thing, whatever it may be. Who the hell knows? Could be intellectual property rights. I don't know. Don't care. The point being is, I think there's a chance that Ethereum can have a larger market cap than Bitcoin. And that doesn't make it a better currency or a better investment. It's because by the nature of a platform versus an asset, gold is the purest form of money that we've had, and it's a $10 trillion asset. The currency markets trade $4 trillion a day, and they're not in any way the same shape or form, but it's a bigger platform because more people use it. So the currency market overall is worth more. So I just think of it in those terms. And again, it's a very macro way of looking at it, which is not interested in the fight between the technologies and what tribe believes in what and how many coins can you measure and what's the total supply. It's like, okay, there is a chance here that this does really well, but I don't have enough conviction to make that my large bet. My large bet is Bitcoin because I have full conviction. One thing I've learned is you need to think more about human behavior and incentives and why people are doing things. So as you alluded to, why is it so tribal? It's actually a throwback to 2016, when there was a lot of these projects rising. Nobody knew who was going to win. Everyone put their money in them, and you want your own to win, right? It's like going to the horse races and saying,
sports teams.
Sports teams, right? And that war is still being fought, and it's a false narrative now. Because Bitcoin's dominance as what it is now established. It's clear. It's institutionalized. That's over. So does it matter about the rise of these other things? That they're not in competition with each other. But human behavior is driving that. And I think as a macro guy, it's actually to my advantage, because if you call it shitcoins, I want to know about it. Because I know there's opportunity because you're being dumb. And you're being dumb, not that you might be right, but you've got a closed mind. And if I'm up against somebody with a closed mind, I can find an edge. And that's how I look at this. And I look at this whole space and I see it's a very narrative driven space. It's all behavioral driven. So use that behavior to your advantage, because within that is something interesting. I'm also intellectually interested in the future because that's what I do. And if somebody tells me not to look at Ripple, I will go and look at Ripple because you'll not tell me what to do. And I will find out myself what its flaws and what its potential benefits are and assess the probability myself. I may reach exactly the same conclusion as you. I may reach a completely different conclusion. But imagine if I do, and I don't own Ripple, I'm not getting into that fight, but let's assume I think it's got a 10% chance of becoming something much bigger, but the whole market is giving it a 0.5% chance. Well, that misalignment in risk reward is a huge opportunity. That's what we do in financial markets. We have to remain open. You can't trade financial markets and go, well, I'm only going to trade Apple. And every other company's a fraud. They're not as good because their phones aren't as good. I mean, that's ridiculous. What we look for is, okay, where is the secular trend change? What's the best vehicle to express that view in? Can I diversify that view? Can I add juice to that view? Can I create alpha around that view? So that's why I come at it, and I think all the macro guys, Dan Tapiero, we all come at it exactly the same way. Dan Moorhead, we just come at it differently. And I understand that some of the crypto community doesn't like that because it feels like we're kind of abusive of the space. But, much like I talked about with regulation, I get people upset when I say regulation's a good thing. Well, if you want to get rich, people are going to have to come into the space. And talking, and I joke about this, talking about cyber hornets, I'm sorry, it's not going to bring a single corporate treasurer or a single institutional asset allocator into this game. And if you want to get rich, you need those guys to come into the game. It's a really difficult thing because people don't want the traditional financial markets in this space, but they need it for it to go up.
Okay,